Alright everybody, it's time. It's time to do some portraits, and this is going to be your final project. Portraits are an ages-old tradition among artists. Great masters did them. In fact, Rembrandt did something like 100 self-portraits. There's so many different styles to work in, and on top of that there's so many different people to draw. You can draw friends, family members, even yourself, but I would prefer that you didn't draw pets. Only because I want you to focus on the human face and not animals. Now, I would never discourage you from adding lots of extra things into your portrait, but you are under time constraints, so stick to your deadline and do what's manageable for you.
So I'm outside enjoying Mother Nature, and I'm going to do a little bit of portrait work here, and I wanted to walk you guys through some of the major steps you can take to create a template for yourself. And I would highly recommend that you do this in your sketchbook as practice before you jump into your final project, which will be a portrait. So I've got some things set up here ahead of time just so you can sort of see where I'm going with this, and I'm going to go back over the lines that I've already sketched so you get an idea of where to start. You can see here that I've cut my page in half because I wanted to do two different images here. I wanted to do a front view and a profile. Of course, there are many different vantage points from which you can draw a person's portrait. 3/4 views from different angles, foreshortened. As I mentioned in a previous video, drawing a face on an egg and looking at it from different angles can kind of help you understand that, or even using clay or something to sculpt a couple of the features on there and just hold it at different angles to see how you might draw the face. Now, when we did the gesture drawing, we drew an upside down egg to symbolize the shape of the head, which is the same way that I started here. So on my front view, you can see that I've got this upside down egg shape. It comes down, tapers at the bottom, and at the top is where it's the widest. That's your cranium. That's what that's supposed to be. And you can get this as close to egg shaped as you want. I am going to run a little bit off the page here. I don't have a big enough piece of paper for the size that I drew this, but you'll get the gist of what I'm getting at here. So there's our upside down egg shape for the front view. It will fit into a rectangle actually. It's narrow. Now if we were to draw the head in the profile, it would fit into a square because of the occipital. This bump, you can feel it on the back of your skull. That's why when we draw the egg shape from different angles, we sometimes add in a secondary egg shape, an overlapping one that takes the place of the crown, the cranium, and then the front part is what comes down and makes up the front part of the face. I'm just going to trace over that so you can see the shape that I created here. This is the initial egg shape here, and then the overlapping one that comes up here through the frontalis and creates the occipital on the back. And that's how we get that shape for the profile view. So once you've got those, you can always add in some necklines, which I have done here ahead of time. Now, something to keep in mind when you are drawing males as opposed to females is male necks tend to be slightly wider. Sometimes they'll even come down right below the ears. The female neck will be a little bit more narrow. And the shoulder width, if I were drawing the whole shoulder width, males tend to be 3 heads wide at the shoulders. So you can imagine one of these next to this over here somewhere would be the extent of my shoulder. That would be the measurements for a male, 3 heads wide. Female, more like 2.5. But not always. One size does not fit all. And I'm going to put that up here so we never forget. One size does not fit all. That's why we measure. That's why we have measuring units. That's why we use sight measuring with a pencil, holding up the tip, putting your thumb at the base of your measuring unit, and then using that to figure out where everything should be placed. This is just a template. This is just a place to start. It's a starting point. It's a foundation. From here, you make adjustments, okay? Because everybody's eyes are different shapes, different amounts of space apart. Everybody's nose is a different shape. Everybody's mouth has a different central line. Everybody has different cheekbones. Everybody has a different jawline and different size ears. You have to measure. You have to scrutinize and look at the details whenever you're drawing someone to get a likeness. But this is a good place to start. Get a basic template and then work on top of it. I put my neck on for my bust, and this is about how far I would expect you to take a portrait if you did one, down to the neck, the top of the shoulders. You don't have to take it any further than that, but I would appreciate you having something underneath the head so it's not a floating head. We want to be able to see that it's actually part of somebody's body and connected to the rest of it. Almost everything on the face can be set up through bisecting lines. It's the same way when you're drawing the body. Everything, as I mentioned before, seems to have a pair. There's a pairing, and that's how you can line things up. Nostrils, the edges of the mouth, the eyes, the ears, everything has an equivalent on the other side, which will kind of help you get placement. Draw a bisecting line directly down the center. That's your vertical bisection. You should do another one horizontal. And I drew these side by side for a reason, because my positioning should not change. If the head is looking at me and then turning sideways, all of my features should line up on the lines that I'm about to add. So now that I've got that bisecting line that gives me the relative center of that upside down egg shape, I'm going to drop below that line and then take this section from the chin to the center of the face and bisect it. So that's what this line is. Obviously, drawing this with a ruler would make it far more accurate. So once you've got that line, you're going to drop down again from chin to this line, bisect again. Then if you want to, you can put this bottom line in, which will tell you where the chin should stop. And there will be a lot more of these lines that you can draw across just to line up features as you go. But this is a good way to set up a template just to know where everything belongs. Now we look at the features, and we're going to look at the features individually after we do this so we can talk about how each one is drawn. There's a lot to unpack with portraiture, just as there is with figure drawing, just as there is with perspective. You really have to spend a lot of time with it and really study each aspect. And this is a crash course. You really don't have much time to work on this, so I'm giving you sort of the simple template to work from, a sort of a kickstart, if you want to call it that. The first thing that I'm going to look at is the width of my head in relationship to the eyes. One of the most prominent and important features on the face, gives the face life. I have set up a couple of little tick marks here to indicate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 equal spaces across the center of the face at its widest point, the temple. This is where it's at its widest point, and then it starts to go backwards in towards the center. So at the widest point, the head is 5 eyes wide. That's on a standard male, again, idealized form. One size does not fit all, still have to measure. The eyes are going to be 1 eye's width apart and 1 eye's width to the temple. And what you can do here is just sort of draw in a circle that is bisected by this line. And what that's doing is it's a placeholder for the orbital cavity, which is the hole in your skull where your eyeball sits. I've drawn bisecting circles there so I kind of understand where that orbital cavity is. From there, I'm going to get a couple other features before I look at the details. The nose, next thing down on the face. The center here is where the top of the bridge of my nose is going to be, and you can imagine that it's sort of like an hourglass shape, like it tapers inward here. You can feel the bump, the impression on your face and between your eyes, and then it comes out. And there are several planes that you're responsible for. One of those planes is the bridge of the nose. There's also secondary planes to the bridge on either side. You can draw lines like this to indicate that the nose comes down to either side of the face. It's a lot of different planes. We've got 1, 2, 3 planes here. You can call this 4 if you say this indication right here, this indentation bumps upward. Then we come down here to the ball of the nose, and I'm just going to kind of draw this as a geometric shape. And then coming off the ball of the nose to either side are where your nostrils are going to be. And I'm just drawing those as simple geometric shapes as well, and then carving out the shape of the nostril to either side. See, I have it all tapering down to a point right here on this line. That's what that second bisecting line was telling me, was where is the bottom of the nose, where the septum is. That's right there. And there is a second plane that kind of cuts through the ball of the nose and the nostrils, because this part's underneath. So it's usually in shadow, and then this is where the highlight's catching. If you're outdoors and there's ambient light, and you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8, 9, 10 underneath the nostril and both nostrils and the ball of the nose. Now, how do I know if my nose is the right shape, right size? Again, measure, but if you're looking for a template, drawing a line from the exterior of each side of the nose, it should come in close to where the interior of this circle is on either side. So I'm pretty close on both sides. This might need to be moved over just a tad. So then we're going to move down, and we can even draw one more line in between here. We could bisect this section, just this small section, and it would give us the line of the mouth. And the line of your mouth, you'd be surprised how much of a important characteristic that is in terms of making it look like you, because everybody's mouth line is a little bit different. But I drew it through here, and you can see the edges, the corners of my mouth line up with the center of these circles that I drew. So they'll line up with the center of the eye. Now when I draw the top lip, you could draw this however, if this works for you, you could just kind of draw a curved line and then take a notch out right there in the center. This next line down here is where the bottom lip is going to rest. And you know it's going to come from here, and it's angled towards the corners of the mouth. And that's also going to indicate to me how far down I need to dip with the center part of the mouth here, because there's like a little indentation, like a dip there, which is also showing where the opening of the mouth might be. And then this bottom lip actually meets with where the chin would be. So some people have more prominent chins than others. You might have to put that chin line in to indicate that it's there. And from there, since all of our features are placed, we can start thinking about the exterior, the jawline. Everybody does this in a different way. Everybody has their own methods for this. What I'm showing you is one of the methods that I was taught, and I would come up here and sort of follow along and figure out what shape my jawline is. Maybe it comes out, maybe it's a little more square than what I drew it here, which is very possible. A lot of men have rather square jawlines. And it's going to come up here, and it's going to connect somewhere into where the cheekbone is, the zygomatic bone. And everybody's got different cheekbones as well, so you really have to scrutinize how high up some people's cheekbones are. They usually terminate and are indicated, the terminus of the zygomatic is indicated by those lines that come off the sides of the nose. Okay? And the zygomatic connects back into the side of the head up here somewhere. And from there, we get the temple. And you can see how I'm kind of carving that out. It's another S shape, carving out where the temple will be. The temple helps me place the eyebrow as well. That is an important landmark. It's a good thing to put in. I'm drawing a cross. Remember we talked about how important it is to draw a cross. You got a little preview of this with the caricature, just in terms of placement of features, but this is a less exaggerated version of that. So I've got my basic eyebrow lines in. The terminus of the eyebrow lines up with the top of the ear. And generally speaking, the earlobe will extend all the way down to about halfway between the septum and the top lip. Now I drew that as kind of a lumpy shape. You could just draw it as like a simple line that turns into like sort of a square shape. So now that I've got those, I'm going to address the eyes one more time. And the thing about the eye is it's got a lot of different planes going on, so you have to address each one. This top part of my circle is actually going to be the top part of my eyelid. There's going to be a tear duct right here, somewhere close to the center. Then the bottom of the eye, I'm going to put that in as well. See, now it's taken on this sort of almond shape. Now there is a shelf here. That is where eyelashes actually curve out and over the edge. And then this bottom part of my sphere is actually where you might have some deeper lines. The older you get, the more sort of sunken in your eyes seem to appear. And then I can come in here and I can just put in an eyelid. And then inside of that eyelid I can draw another circle. The circle is concealed by the top part of the eyelid, which will be the heaviest part of the eyelid. Inside of that circle is a pupil. Inside of that pupil there's usually some kind of highlight, and there's like an iris around that. So you see where that's placed. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing over on this side. Remember what I did? I made sure that I knew where the top part of my eyelid was. I found the bottom part as well. I put in that little shelf. Made a point to take note of where the circle under the eye might be. And then carved out that top eyelid and put in my circle, another circle, highlight, iris. Okay? Now where your eyebrows are, I'm going to beef this up just a little bit. From your eyebrows down to where your eyes are, this is a plane that goes back and in, so there's going to be some shadow there. So that'll be something to take note of. The top lip is back and inward, so there will be a shadow on the top lip. Bottom lip juts out, highlight. Same with, remember, the bottom part of the nose, shadow. Top part of the nose, highlight. Top part of the chin, same thing, highlight. Maybe the bottom part will have some shadow underneath, and then usually there's some type of shadow cast underneath the chin. Remember, we did that with the caricature as well. So there's the placement of the features looking at the front view of the face. So let's move over to the profile view. See, a few things are going to change, but placement should still be relatively the same. I can work my way across and just see where everything lines up. So looking at the front of my head, it's going to bulge out here because that is where your eyebrows are. So I'm going to bring it down, and I'm going to imagine that this is where my eyebrows are going to be. So I just kind of put like a little bump, a triangle there. Right here, where my nose dips in and then comes back out. So I can use these lines to help me figure out, okay, the ball of my nose is going to start here, and it's going to come back down in. And I have the bridge of the nose connected to that, and nostrils are going to come back like so, and then the top parts, those nostrils right there, bridge of the nose straight down, and then there's this space here, this empty space, this shelf or this plane coming backwards and towards the zygomatic where it's connecting into the face. There's that line where the nose is, so you know that that's the zygomatic. That's that cheekbone I looked at on the skull. Coming back and connecting into part of the cranium here. So now that I know where that is, it'll be a little easier to place my eye and figure out exactly where I want to put my eyebrow. So here's my eyebrow, which the terminus of that is going to be right next to where my temple is going to be. And the eye, since we're looking at it from the side view, we're not looking at it from the front anymore. It's not going to be the same thing. It's not going to be like drawing a circle. This time it's kind of like drawing the letter A, but on its side, and it's rounded. So the eyeball has a rounded quality to it. I'm going to put the tear duct in right there behind it. I'm going to put a line going backwards. Another one up here going backwards. This one's going to be the heavy one, and it's going to overlap the bottom one. Then I can put in this line as well, and then I can put one in here. Just remember, this is a shelf, and this is the top of that eyeball. So there is some value there to be seen. The bridge of my nose, might want to add in a couple lines there to indicate that indentation, that fold, where the top of the bridge of the nose meets with the frontalis. Then I'm going to come down here and draw the upper lip, which is going to connect this little indentation here. Remember that? I'm going to draw that and then figure my top lip is going to start here, and it goes back at an angle inward, and I'm going to put the corner of my mouth here, lining up again, still halfway, about halfway, the distance from here to the terminus of my eye, even from the side. Bottom lip down here, juts out, curves back like so. And then the chin, draw that out a little bit more rounded. Then I can work the jawline in, coming back, curves up towards where the ear is going to be. The ear, same thing, terminus of the eyebrow indicates the top of the ear, and then about halfway between the nose, where the septum is and where the top lip is, that's going to be the bottom, and I just draw that as like a curved shape. And of course, getting into the ear, there's all these separate parts that we'd have to draw. But for now, just the symbol of where the ear is going to be enough. And my temple actually need to come back a little bit further than that. There, I've got the features placed. From here, I can worry about the details, draw in the iris and the pupil. So now that looks pretty much where it needs to be. Chop off the bottom part of the nose, knowing where the shadow is. Shadow on the top lip. Shadow inside the orbital cavity. Probably a shadow on the temple. Underneath the chin, we have these big muscles that come out, part of our neck. It's the sternocleidomastoideus. That's a big word. So there's a template for drawing the face. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for you to understand placement of features. So if you were to sketch this in your sketchbook, I think you'd have a better understanding of placement and how everything is bisected and based off of the measurements of certain features. You can use certain features as measuring units to help you line things up, like the 5 eyes wide. You start here with a sketch, you draft this lightly, and then you scrutinize the person that you're drawing and make adjustments based on what you see.
Just to give you an idea of the amount of study required to really get a hold on the face and all the musculature, the bones underneath. This is an old sketchbook of mine from years ago. You can see here there's a skull underneath. We put tracing paper on top in order to figure out where all the muscles were and find them. We did this several different times from different angles. You can see all these sketches. Just do like a little pass through so you can see the lengths to which art students go. And we did whole pages of eyes, whole pages of just different noses to understand the structure. There's some more noses, mouths, different ears, because each one of these separate features is really its own thing. There's like a lot to be studied before you can put it all together, and then just the bust, the neck, just knowing where to place everything. This was for a portrait drawing class. But if you really want to see results, if you really want to see yourself get better, this is the kind of thing you really got to do in order to get there. So when we talk about the separate features, you have to kind of explore each of them before you start to piece them together and put them on that template that I just showed you. So I just want to talk about each one of the features briefly and remind you of some of the things I just mentioned while I was drawing that template. So the eye is where I'm going to start. And just drawing an eye as a circle to start, and then using some lines to cut it into that almond shape. I always put my tear duct in right there. This is like the edge of where the eyeball is going to be, and it's helping me define the shape that will be my eyelid. Okay? The shelf that we see at the bottom here, it comes out from underneath the top lid, and you can kind of just like draw that shelf all the way over to where the tear duct is, like a highlight that's going to be right on this region. And it's also where you're going to see eyelashes kind of curving up and over the edge. On the top lid, you're always going to make this heavier because it's in shadow, it's creating a shadow, it's actually casting a shadow across the orb of the eye. And it's also where all your eyelashes are, your long eyelashes, and they curve away from center, they curve away from the center of the face. And then down here, underneath this shelf, is where we'll see that slight indication of the rest of the orb of the eye. Okay? Some people have those, crow's feet as they get older. This
wrinkly part, which is that top lid overlapping the orb of the eye. And then this is bulging forward. So in here is where we need to worry about drawing the iris. I'm going to draw it actually as though it's looking down. So I'm going to curve the top part of this circle as though it's concealed underneath part of the bottom lid. And I'm going to draw a secondary circle inside of that to indicate my pupil. I'm always going to have this, the iris. Some people's are darker than others. And then you're going to have some kind of reflective light or reflection inside the pupil. Sometimes that reflection will actually pass over across this line into the iris. So there's all kinds of different ways that you can draw eyes. This is kind of standard fare, but maybe I wanted to make it a little bit blockier. Same idea. I'll still start with the circle, but maybe my eyelid's real heavy and kind of at an angle. Some people have like weird folds in their eyelids. You just have to scrutinize what you're seeing and make the bottom of it a little bit more angular. Still drawing the same parts, same constituent parts. I'm just drawing them a little bit differently. There. This time I'm going to have my eye looking up this way. Still drawing the pupil, blocking it in, still drawing the iris. Now that one looks kind of angry, unless you're looking at it like this. If it's going this direction, say this is where my tear duct was, then it would look angry, but over here is where my tear duct is. So now it looks kind of worried because it's got that kind of upturn to the eyelid. You're back to planar analysis again. So a good way to do that, to give yourself an example, would be to take like a ball or an egg, for example, and wrap it in cloth. So you have the ball and you have cloth wrapped over it, and part of the ball is exposed. So if you have the ball and you wrap it in cloth so that part of it is exposed, you have all these folds, but you can still see the shape of the sphere through the folds of the fabric. And that's how you are drawing an eyeball, pretty much. So the eye is the most popular and fun one that people like to draw. The one that people hate drawing is the nose. We just talked about how many different constituent parts there are, how many planes there are when you break down the nose. So if you're looking at it from the front, you've got the bridge of the nose at the top where it terminates into the brow. You've got it coming down, and then this part is shaped differently from person to person. I have like an interesting nose. I have like sort of a bump, and it curves inwards, and it comes down to where the ball of the nose is, and then the next plane starts. You've got the ball of the nose here, and you've got the nostrils coming off the sides, which you can just draw as like sort of three overlapping balls. But you never want to neglect the fact that from here and here, where the eyes are going to be, there's this plane curving down. It's the part that the nose juts out from your face. So somehow show those lines, because that is a separate plane and it connects into where the cheekbones are going to be as well. So down here with the ball of the nose, everybody's is a little bit different. Where the septum is, how much of the nostrils can we see? Some people you can see a lot of their nostrils. Some people you can barely see their nostrils because their nose is sort of turned down a little bit. I always carve out that bottom part with a line to indicate to myself that this down here is a separate plane from this. This actually, it's almost like two separate planes. There's the part that's curving inwards towards the ball of the nose, and then there's the part curving away towards the face where it connects into the zygomatic. So that would be like a nose from the front. What about a nose from the profile? And some people have like a really prominent bridge that comes down. Maybe the ball is real sharp and upturned, comes back. Where's the nostril? Where's this indication of side of the nose? Where's the ball of the nose? And then all this space here, this shape is a plane. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We can call this whole part 7. 7 different planes just for one feature. The nose can be tricky depending upon which angle you're drawing it at. Maybe you have to draw it from underneath, so you'd see more of the nostrils in this case. You see more of these parts of the nose, see more of the ball coming down where the septum is, and maybe you wouldn't see most of the bridge. It would be concealed behind the ball depending upon if you were drawing somebody who had sort of an upturned nose, or drawing them from a foreshortened angle, looking at them from underneath. Whenever you go to draw the mouth, I mentioned before that the top lip is in shadow and the bottom lip will have the highlight on it. So just drawing something like that is good enough an indication of the mouth, but you'll have to come back in there and study some of this and make some of this a little bit more well defined. Like the line of the mouth will be very dark because it's actually an opening. The top lip, you can imagine there's like striations in it, and it's also, like I said, it's in shadow because it curves back and inwards towards the opening of the mouth. It's like a shelf because your top lip and what's above it juts out, and then this part goes back in. So if you look at it from the side view, there's my top lip, there's my bottom lip, where it meets with my chin. Bottom lip juts out, top lip comes up and goes back at an angle, so it's in shadow. And that's just a general rule. It's not always the case. Lighting changes in a room where there's less ambient light. So keeping in mind that you'll have to still look for that, but that's a general rule of thumb here, is to draw the top lip in shadow, the bottom lip. See how I'm using these like little curved lines to indicate those striations in the lip tissue. You can do it from the bottom too, but just leave that area in the middle to indicate the highlight that's actually right there on the mouth. Of course, these features are going to change depending upon the person's expression. That's a pretty straightforward mouth, but what if their mouth is wide open? That's going to change what it looks like. You're going to see some of the teeth, and I'll usually draw the teeth as a whole shape first and then break it down. And it's the same thing we've been doing with everything else to this point. Now, people are very complicated to draw. The face in particular is very complicated to draw. Just draw the features as you see them as simple shapes, and then come back in and start breaking them down into their constituent parts. As you can see, I'm kind of lightly sketching that. Then I could come back in here, worry about how much of the lip I'm seeing because it's stretching pretty far. Bottom lip, see a bunch of that here. There's someone yelling. They're angry. But it's all based on what you're seeing. You have to draw what you see. In order to draw what you observe, you have to measure, you have to scrutinize, and you have to practice. Lots of little things to pay attention to whenever you draw something, especially if you're drawing someone with like some really outrageous expression, or they're yelling or something like that. The ears are also kind of complex. Now, I just drew this shape as though this was sort of a standard ear shape, and you're going to come in here, and there's all these different parts to the ear that kind of curve inwards. There's a part that overlaps here. There's the lobe of the ear. There's the actual opening for the ear itself. And there's all kinds of different values to be had within the ear. Both the ear and the nose are made up of cartilage, and you can see through them. And because you can see through them, the values in them will be lighter, and there's going to be light kind of coming through ear and part of the nose depending upon the position you're drawing it at. That's why ears always appear very red, because you're seeing the blood vessels through the ears because light is going through the ear. So if you ever see someone outdoors and their ears look really red, it's because light is like shining through the cartilage that is their ear. Drawing them at separate different angles. Sometimes you'll have like this plane that connects into the head. You'll see part of the side of it, the lobe of the ear connecting back in. For the purpose of just getting you guys to draw a portrait on the fly, I think knowing how these features are pieced together should be enough to get you going. So when we go to draw a portrait, we have to look at the way the person is sitting and draw our template according to that. So let's say the person who was sitting for me was sitting at a 3/4 view angle, not looking directly at me. I'm going to draw that upside down egg shape to start. And then depending upon how much of the back of their head, that occipital, I can see, I can draw that other one coming forward. Again, this is at a foreshortened angle, so you can imagine if I were to bisect that, it's kind of running through the center here. I'm drawing my bisecting line through the center of the face here, and then I have it kind of tilted downward just a little bit, so I'm curving that line, because the head is not flat, it is a curved form. So I've got the relative placement for where my features are going to be, and from there I can imagine where the neckline is actually going to be. It's going to come out from the base of the skull, and we're going to see some of it here, and then you can draw the bust, the shoulders to wherever they would terminate. But I'm not as concerned with that part as I am with just knowing that you understand how to construct the actual head and put all these features in their place. Place those circles again. If the center is here, then I can put in that shape for my nose, that sort of triangle shape, and then that diamond shape on the bottom, so I know where the base is. It's also going to indicate to me where there might be a shadow cast by the nose. And I can put some circles on the sides if I need to, in terms of placement of the sides of the nose. The mouth is going to be down here, and it's also going to be curved, like all these other lines are. It's going to curve backwards. I'm going to put my bottom lip down here. My chin's going to be down here. And then from there you can come in and start to look at the exterior contour of the head, where we're going to see where the eyebrow is, where the cheekbone juts out, zygomatic connecting into the side of the nose, then the jawline, where it connects into where the chin is, and then from here curves back and angles upwards towards where the ear is going to be. I know where my eyebrows are based on these circles that I've placed, so I can say that the terminus here is going to line up with the top of the ear, and this curved line, which is the halfway point between the septum and the top lip, is going to be where the bottom of the ear is, so I can place the ear back here like so. And I'm doing this very loosely. I'm holding my pencil as though I'm drafting, which is all I'm doing at this point. I haven't choked up on it because I'm not worried about details yet. I'm just getting placement. Now I can take those circles and sort of carve out of there those almond shapes, or where the eyes will be. You know, and some people have wider eyes than others. Some people's eyelids aren't as heavy. You know, the features on a older person are going to be different than the features on a younger person. So again, you always have to measure. You always have to scrutinize and make adjustments as you go. The other thing we didn't address is hair. And if we're drafting everything else to be these large, basic shapes, then the hair should be done in the same manner. Let's say this person has a lot of hair. Where is their hairline going to start? That's what you have to determine in relationship to where their eyebrows are. Where is their hairline actually going to start? Have a little bit of a widow's peak. And the hair will go above the top of the cranium. So if you just block it in as a shape, as a big general shape, where does it overlap the head? Where does it tuck back in? Where does this part go? Does it come in front of the ear? There's probably like a sideburn or something here. Here's where the temple starts, and use that as a landmark to figure out where to place more of the hair. Maybe some of it comes over the shoulder like that. Now it's starting to look like this could be a female, in which case I need to maybe change some of my lines a little bit, angle things inward a little, make the neck slightly thinner. And I'm just going to choke up on my pencil at this point and start thinking about details and how I can actually turn this into something that looks, resembles a person. And I'm going to do that now. Something else that's a really good exercise in terms of understanding the planes of the face is to look at the skull, because that's the foundation. That's the foundation of everything. Now your cheekbones, these are the zygomatics that run underneath the orbital cavity, which is where your eye sets. That's that circle we were drawing. The bump here for the brow that leads into the frontalis, leading back to the cranium. Got these areas here for the temporal fossa, your temple on the sides of your face. Got the nasal cavity here. There's the bridge of the nose. There's where it meets with the brow right there. That's that bump, that plane I was talking about, comes down, and then all this is cartilage. And then you've got your top lip that comes down, bulges outward at the top, and then the lip itself curves back down inward. Bottom lip curves out over this part here, the chin, the mental protuberance, the bump here in the chin, and the sides of the jaw leading back in and underneath the zygomatic to either side. So there it is from the profile. You can see that bump on the back of the head. The front is skinnier than it is from the side. And this will fit into a rectangle, and this will fit into a square. Learning how to draw the skull can actually really help inform the way that you draw the face. You can do this project with whatever media you want. I have tons of different media here to pick from. I have all these pastel pencils. You can use colored pencil. You can use ink and marker like I did for that first one. Whatever you want. It's up to you. Really, this last project is more about me just seeing that you attempted a portrait. It has nothing to do with the medium. You can use charcoal. I wish we would have had a chance to work with brown craft paper because it's a mid-tone and you can work with both the dark charcoal and adding white for highlight. It really makes things pop and sets them off. I don't have the media to give you. We can't exchange. I can't roll out a piece of craft paper and mail it to each of you. I wish I could. You could take a paper bag if you have one lying around, cut it open and use the inside of that. Like this, like brown paper. It's mid-tone. So drawing a portrait on this with pastel and white chalk, it actually really shows up well, and it's nice to have that mid-tone to work from. You can use a piece like this, or you can work in your sketchbook if that's what you have. It's not a big deal to me what size it is at this point. We have to make do with what we have, and in my mind the most important thing is just that you understand how to construct the face in such a way that makes sense. The caricature was kind of a primer for that. I'm not going to hold it against you if your portraiture looks a little bit cartoony. Mine tend to do the same. I don't have a problem with cartoons. I think it's just another way of drawing. If you look at portraiture throughout the ages, you look at all the masters, some of them were really good at making things look realistic through planar analysis. Others kind of exaggerated things. There's portraits of all different artists, and they all do things a little bit differently, but generally speaking, the structure of the face is still the same. So I'm going to jump into a portrait here. I'm going to do this real quick, and you're going to see it even faster. And then when I'm done, I'll have a few more words for you, and then it'll be your turn.